Around the NFL podcast is still waiting to find out about Latvia.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hansis. I come to you from a virtual room filled with heroes. Mark Sessler, Chris Wessling, Greg Rosenthal. What is up, boys?
Hey, Dan.
Sometimes I try to figure out what the money tag is, but then I figured there's more important things to talk about, so you just leave it. You take the L personally, and you get onto the business at hand, which is Week 3, Sunday in the NFL. And isn't it strange, boys? When you take the Ravens and Chiefs out of the mix, they play, of course, on Monday night. Big spot for Brian Greasy there. Ooh, doggy. Doesn't it, how wide open the league feels through 3 Sundays? When you take those juggernauts out, there are some truly wretched teams, but even the 3-0 teams, you could definitely make cases against those teams for various reasons, and then everybody else is kind of fighting it out. This seems like, in what's been a weird year, we could have a wild season heading our way.
Yeah, it's kind of like, mom and dad went away for the weekend, and, the teenage sons and daughters think that they are full-fledged adults ready to, flex their muscles and show their wares. But mommy and daddy will return. That's all I'd tell you. That's all I'd say.
Who's mommy and who's daddy? I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out tomorrow. I mean, it also depends what kind of relationship that is. I mean, in some cases.
Also, who's stronger? Yeah, who's to say one is the victor is this person, and
Right. You attempted to, but we got you out of that corner.
I just steered right out of there. That was.
It's interesting because last week at this time I would have said there are clearly some dominant teams running away with things, and the difference between the good teams and the bad teams is even more stark this year than normal. 1 week can change a lot.
Well, but the games all look so similar. I think that to me is what's striking. That every game's in the 30s. That two guys throwing for over 400 yards feels totally normal. No lead feels safe. The lack of penalties and the amount of scoring is all historic. And so that is what is striking. The NFL cooked up a whole new sport here.
This penalty thing is interesting because it reminds me of last season when baseball, they juiced the baseballs. And they're like, we're just going to completely change the sport by there being an uptick of home runs by about 30 to 40%. If they really are serious about lowering the level of penalties calls, that is juicing the ball. That's juicing the offenses.
They've been doing that for 40 years. I mean, that's every rule change is geared towards offense. And actually the penalties now just kind of brings it back to about 15, 20 years ago.
Greg,
penalties
don't hit me with it's not a big deal. Wes, jump in.
Of course it's a big deal, but penalties
obviously
are
Greg
not
missed
back.
the entire Jeff Triplett era in which he wasn't happy unless 73 penalties were called. This sport had reached a point where it wasn't even football anymore. It's hard to watch because you couldn't get any rhythm into a game. Too many penalties.
Right. Wes and I are agreeing here. They're just bringing it back to about, year 2000 level of penalties. So it's not like breaking records. They're just bringing it back. Penalties had risen and risen and risen and risen and dial it back. No one cares about those
Sometimes you have to tell the
zebras.
coaches to chill.
See,
These coaches get in the competition committee and they're like, we want you to concentrate on this year. Call this all the time. And it's like, hey, no. How about we think about the fans for once?
The host starts the show and gets everybody nice and lubed up. See, everybody's warmed up to get into the games right now. Everybody's all hot and bothered. All right.
Go.
A lot of games to get to, so let's dig right in, starting with a really memorable showdown between undefeated teams in Orchard Park.
Josh waiting. Now the snap. Josh going to throw it. Looks, fires into the end zone. He's got Tyler Kroft open. Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown, Buffalo! Touchdown, Bills! A 4-yard toss. Josh Allen to Tyler Kroft for the touchdown. 15 seconds left on the clock. Unbelievable.
Are you kidding me?
John Murphy and Steve Tasker with the call for WGR. The Bills blew a 25-point lead on Sunday and lived to tell the tale. The Bills happily received the gift of a questionable PI call on 4th down, then won the game on a Josh Allen to Tyler Kroft hookup with 15 seconds to play. Final score, 35-32. Wow, Greg, the Rams came this close to a comeback for the ages, only to let victory slip away.
They left too much time on the clock. You know, when you come back from 28-3, you got to time that final touchdown just to go to overtime and then win the coin flip, which is probably the only way the Rams defense was going to get a stop in a big moment here, because Josh Allen did it all in this game in terms of the roller coaster, the whole experience. They had 9 possessions and they scored 5 touchdowns. So I don't want to hear anything about the Bills' offense being in any way a letdown. Now, he helped set up the comeback with a couple of turnovers, one of which came on a very questionable call, but was also a terrible throw by Allen. So, you know, he was at some fault. Aaron Donald took over the game, as Aaron Donald does. But my big takeaway is that the Bills are an offensive team. You want to get on part of their team for blowing the lead, get on the defense. I look at them more as a team that's going to make mistakes offensively, as we saw here and there, but that had 2 3rd and 23 situations with the game on the line, and they wound up converting them both. They got one into a 4th and 9. They got that questionable call, as you mentioned, Dan, and if they didn't get it, we'd be talking about how they blew this game. But I still, as a global view, take a look at this Bills team and think this offense is really dangerous. And Allen's going to have some ups and downs, but the conversion that they've had into an offense that can score over 30 regularly is massive, and they are going to be a tough team to beat when that's the case.
Well, one thing that stuck out to me was the uproar over the controversial call at the end of the game. And to be honest, I caught a lot of this game. The only reason the Rams were in the game was because of a bad call in their favor, in which there was a simultaneous possession interception, which was clearly caught by the offensive player, and then once they hit the ground was wrestled out of his hands by the defensive player. It was a horrible call, and they tried to defend it afterwards. Al Riveron did, and it didn't make any sense when he tried to defend it either.
I hate a terrible throw, though, too. And they gave up 4 touchdowns in 4 possessions very quickly. So I think it's giving the Rams a little too little credit, saying that's the only reason. It was definitely a turning point, but it was a bad decision by Allen. And more to the point, the Rams offense started cooking in the 3rd and 4th quarters.
I hated that call. It's funny, we just started the show talking about how the referees are keeping the flags in their pockets. That, to me, at the end of the game there, and I know Al Riveron got behind his boy there, but that seemed very ticky-tack with the game on the line to call that. But you know what, that happens. Ultimately, I think if you're the Rams, yeah, you're smarting from that call, but also there were 2 3rd and forevers that they had.
Right.
The Bills
make a
on.
stop.
And all you got to do is make a stop, and that was, that was 2 opportunities they had, and they let it go by the boards, and that is a credit to Allen. I didn't get a chance to see this game yet, so I can't really say too much about it other than his ability to just move this team up and down the field for 3 straight weeks. He has passed for 300-plus yards in 3 straight weeks, and they are averaging, I believe, 430 yards, total yards per game, and 31 points per game through 3 weeks, which is obviously franchise records across the board. There's something special happening with this offense.
I just find it so interesting that, like, Allen continues to be, I mean, for basic reasons, an extremely polarizing signal caller, but I mean, the idea that his production, that what he's producing weekly is not completely legitimate, that this offense isn't built really well by Brandon Beane, their GM. I mean, Cole Beasley is making plays every week. John Brown, Stephon Diggs. Zach Moss was not in the lineup today, but you've got a solid backfield there. Tyler Kroft. I just think that this Bills team is well run and well organized. And, I mean, the Rams were down 21-3 and had not punted. They had kicked a field goal, thrown a pick, kicked another field goal, then it was the end of the half. And it's like, it wasn't just that the Rams were, to Greg's point, it wasn't a Bills defensive dominance, but I just think this Bills offense is for real. And let the doubters doubt.
What happened on defense,
let them
though?
doubt.
What happened, Greg? What happened when it was 28-3 and then all of a sudden 32-28?
I mean, Goff made some great plays on 3rd and long. Neither defense looked great the whole game. I thought the difference in the first half was Goff threw a really bad pick, and the Rams missed the field goal, whereas the Bills had unbelievable field position the whole game because of their kicking game, because of their return game, and because of the turnover. And Dable, to your point, Mark, I mean, guys were wide open, and Allen made some tough throws too, But there was also just guys streaking open the field, and that's without John Brown for most of this game. John Brown left with an injury, and I'd be remiss not to say that Stephon Diggs, has been such a transformative pickup. And you look at the stat line, and I don't think it ended up too flashy for Diggs. It was 4 for 49 and a touchdown. Well, his touchdown, he beat Jalen Ramsey one-on-one, and that was one of the best plays that Allen made on a 3rd and long under pressure in the red zone. And another touch pass that Allen threw on a key drive late in the game, Diggs just made an unbelievable catch on the sideline to keep it going. So when things were falling apart, and at no point did the Bills' defense look great. They really haven't this year at all. They've been pretty mediocre, and they would have had the goat horns here if they lost, but they didn't. This game had everything with Allen, though. He also had 2 penalties in the fourth quarter. One for yelling at the official because he didn't know the rule book in terms of you can't have a horse collar in the pocket, and then another one for a face mask. This is if you were going to bet on a quarterback to have a face mask penalty, it's Josh Allen. He is young Cam Newton, especially in the red zone. They were 5 for 5 in the red zone, and that's to me that the thing that's sustainable is that the Bills team is so tough to stop in the red zone.
And the Rams will be okay. They're going to be fine here. But when you come back from 28-3 down, take the lead, then lose, that's a tough loss. That's a tough one.
If he really has learned how to touch pass, and to me that's by far the biggest difference this year and last year's, he's ahead of Cam Newton's development. Cam Newton wasn't throwing these touch passes in year 3.
He didn't have the rookie or second year that Cam Newton had, but certainly right now he is playing great.
I like it, Wes.
And there are things Josh Allen can do on a football field that Cam Newton's never been able to do.
Greg on the ropes. Rosenthal on the ropes. Let's move on.
Hey, people are allowed to change their minds.
Metcalf and Lockett to the left side. Again, a 4-man rush. Russell looks, sets, has time. Going to throw to the end zone. Lock. It's DK. He makes the catch. Touchdown, Seahawks. I couldn't see him for a second, and suddenly he flashes in the end zone, and it's DK Metcalf, and he, in fact, makes up for the play earlier. And it's only fitting, isn't it, that he's the guy who comes up with the big reception, the touchdown with 1:47 left to play.
You knew that was going to happen. Metcalf makes one of those bonehead plays that happens every couple of years, catching the bomb and then not paying attention and getting the ball knocked out for a touchback. It happened to him. But you just knew he was going to score, and probably score in a big fashion down the stretch of that game, and that's exactly what happened. Russell Wilson's 5th touchdown pass to Metcalf put the Seahawks ahead late, and then Ryan Neal, promoted from the practice squad, had the game-sealing end zone pick. Seahawks 38, Cowboys 31, shootout at the Clink. Steve Raley and Dave Wyman with a call for KIRO. This game certainly lived up to the hype. 2 teams with great offenses and great quarterbacks and suspect defenses, and it played out exactly that way, where the defenses could not get big stops, and every time it seemed like the Cowboys were about to get blown out, no, because Dak Prescott is kind of like playing out of his mind, throwing for 400 yards every game, although it should be said, and it was rightly pointed out by Troy Aikman on the Fox call, the interception that ended the game, it shouldn't have played out that way. That was not 4th down in desperation, heave it up into the end zone. That was live for one more down if it's not there. But you know what? That's the way it went. So the Cowboys now 1-2, and the Seahawks, who are the most entertaining team in football through 3 weeks, are 3-0.
Well, they're entertaining partly because their defense can't stop anyone. They had given up the most yards in the league going into today, and then they give up 500 yards in this game, and they lost Jamal Adams during the game. And so they're going to have to cook up a pass rush. It's just fascinating to see a Seahawks team, so pass-heavy and so offense-heavy. It's obviously got the opportunity to have the best offense in the Russell Wilson era. Their offensive line's playing really well too, but it's just disarming. And I do wonder if there's going to be a correction at some point for a lot of these teams, the Bills, Seahawks, Cowboys, where the defenses do get better as the course of the season goes on, because the Seahawks they need it that way. I don't think they want to play this way every single week.
might be hard to correct. I saw Chris Carson went down late in the game. Looked like a pretty bad knee injury. So that option to saddle him up like they have in previous years might not be there. And you see such a difference in philosophy. That last touchdown to DK Metcalf is 3rd and short in a really tight game, and they're going 30 or 40 yards downfield. And I think Russell Wilson might be the most consistently accurate deep passer I've ever seen.
Yep.
He's just always right on the money from 20 to 40, 50 yards downfield. It's always right where it needs to be.
And they're talking about let Russ cook, and he's cooking for about 650 people at this stage per game. But same with Dak Prescott. He's the second quarterback in league history to throw for 450 yards in back-to-back games. And they really are just, you've got Zeke Elliott. You don't have an issue in the backfield. I thought the fact that Dallas suffered a safety and 2 missed extra points changed that game a little bit down the stretch, that little mistakes like that in a game like this are killer. The Cowboys now backs against the wall, 1-2.
Well, you say that, but I think that, are they in first place?
Yeah.
Well, in a terrible division, but the larger picture is,
they have
who
so
are
much
you?
time to get things right because the NFC East has been so bad, and we're going to get to
division.
it later in the show. So while there's every reason to be very concerned about this defense, which doesn't have Leighton Vander Esch, and did get a nice game from Aldon Smith, who was very active. I think he had 3 sacks, in fact, which is pretty incredible considering the arc of his career. But overall, the defense stinks. I think that's kind of what we thought was something that was possible, Wes, entering 2020. It's certainly turning out that way. That's maybe not as big a concern, or maybe it was. Well, the Seahawks also was a big concern, although they had gotten Jamal Adams, that the defense was going to be a problem. And I guess that's the only thing I would say. Like the Seahawks, I think, Mark, I saw you tweeted they're going to win the Super Bowl. Maybe they will. Maybe this is a magical season and Russell Wilson is that guy. But they need to figure out some things on the other side of the ball. Luckily, they have a lot of time to do it.
One note that I will find a way to tweet that about 25 different teams. And then retweet when I nail one of it. I'll get one of them correct, and that's
we
that's
know
the
your
strategy.
playbook, Sessler. No need to explain.
I saw a tweet that Greg pointed toward an article by I think Bob Stern from The Athletic, where he was saying the best defensive lineman for the Cowboys is Tristan Hill, who barely got on the field as a rookie last year. Their best linebacker is Joe Thomas, who's an undrafted journeyman.
Oof.
Their best secondary guy is Trayvon Diggs, who's a rookie.
And struggled today.
This defense just has nothing that you think it would have.
Those Tyler Lockett touchdowns, it was like a pitch and catch. It was like there was nobody else on the field between Wilson and Lockett. It shouldn't be that easy.
Well, there was a big change. They brought in a coordinator in Mike Nolan, who's been out of the league for a few years. They've been in the same scheme under Rod Marinelli in some form. For how long that was, 7, 8, 9 years. And I don't know if these players quite fit where they're at. I'm impressed, though. I mean, Tyron Smith didn't play in this game. That's maybe a future Hall of Famer. Lyle Collins is maybe the best the Cowboys believe he's a top 5 right tackle. They're playing without their 2 tackles, and they're putting up points like this. They're a little lucky they got that onside kick, or else they'd be 0-3. But it's pretty encouraging they can put up this many points without either of their starting tackles.
I would say one thing, if you're Aldon Smith, it's like that would be essentially like one of us leaving sports writing for half a decade, returning, and in the first blog post that you publish wins a Pulitzer Prize.
They have blogs still?
Well, I'm just saying I don't know what the equivalent is. It's just that it's like he's vanished for half a decade. He returns. He looks like the best defensive player on the field. There's all these human arguments to take more time off away from work and toil.
Yeah.
That's where you're going.
Well, I believe in it.
I was going to say
steadfastly.
I'll let others paint Aldon Smith as a feel-good comeback story. That's someone else's profile to write. But I see your greater point, Mark. Yeah. That maybe just walking away for 5 years and then walking back into a 7-figure paycheck, that is maybe the way to do things ultimately. Food for thought. Any other thoughts on this game? Doesn't sound like it. Let's keep moving.
Edelman on the right wing, Burkhead behind Newton, takes the handoff, runs it left, Burkhead, nice, twisted into the end zone with a diving touchdown for the Patriots. Burkhead for the second time today leaves his feet. It adds to the New England lead.
Nice job, Rex. That's the healthy Rex Burkhead right there.
See, Zolak isn't the same anymore. It's like you deflated him. Bob Sochi and Scott Zolak with a call for WBZ. Rex Burkhead had 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving TD. Part of a 250-yard rushing day for the Pats. 36-20 win over the Raiders. Mark, I didn't see a lot of Cam Newton highlights today, so I guess you can see that as a good thing for the Patriots, that even when Newton doesn't go off, they can still score points.
Yeah, I think the Patriots, and this is the rare game where you get the matchup between two of the only head coaches around that have been traded. That was on my radar early, and I enjoyed it.
Sell it, baby.
Right? And Belichick, to me, I think they made a nice adjustment in halftime. Cam Newton was kind of struggling in this game. I wouldn't call it like a big problem, but the passing game was not what we saw last week against Seattle. And they went into halftime, and I think they came out determined just to run the ball with every single running back they had. J.J. Taylor, who was he 4 weeks ago? He's running the ball. Sony Michel, Burkhead with 3 touchdowns, and they were able to succeed that way. And the Raiders, to me, fell apart offensively down the stretch. This was just a case of where you can look at a Raiders team and say there's a lot to like. Early on in this game, the Raiders were one of the more they were developing into one of the more intriguing teams that I've seen in a while. Wes and I were tweeting about it a little bit. This is a potential wild card type talent, the Las Vegas Raiders. But to me, New England is just kind of showed that you're going to hit a wall against this team. New England's defense is just too good. And it's interesting that we talked about Bill Belichick talking about Darren Waller during the week, and that's usually the death knell for that player. And Darren Waller, I think, finished with 2 catches for 9 yards and had really nothing going into the what I think is Las Vegas' best weapon, along with Josh Jacobs, who had a all-right, serviceable game, but not a difference maker. And it was a classic in an totally empty. No stadium looks more empty to me than Foxborough. It has to do with the camera shots, I think, too, but it just looks empty and desolate. And New England made the Raiders look empty by the end of this game.
Yeah, I called that one on Thursday's show. The Darren Waller, the kiss of death, was the quote.
Right.
When Belichick went out of his way to paint him as a generational type talent, you knew he was going to quadruple team him from the first snap, and he'd finish with about 9 yards, which is exactly what happened.
Getting that Tony Gonzalez coverage. I'd be worried about the Raiders' defense in this one. Sony Michel couldn't make anyone miss last week, and now he gets 13 yards a carry in this game. That's eye-opening. First
big plays he's made since the Super Bowl. They find different ways to win games, and you can hear Cam Newton in the post-game press conference just being so impressed. I think they're just it's a nice change of pace for him, how everyone else is doing things too. Because they had Joe Thuney start at center. I don't think he's ever played center before at the pro level. He's their franchise tag. I mean, they have one of the best centers in the league who's now on IR. That happened since we last talked. And Joe Thuney just moves to center. Everything's fine. They run the ball so well. Chase Winovich has turned into a really good player for them. I don't think it's a great sign that he's by far the best player in their front seven. I mean, it's one of their worst defensive front sevens, I would say, of the Belichick era. But they still find ways to make Carr make mistakes, and those 2 fumbles that Carr had seem to be Mark kind of the
I'd be a little
moment.
concerned, and Greg, you pointed it out too, the skill position, depleted skill position talent for New England. They didn't have a wide receiver with more than 28 yards at half, and they just don't have that guy they can go to, and that's why you're leaning on suddenly Rex Burkhead, who played probably the best game he'll ever play in the NFL today, but how can you count on that week to week? I mean, they found a way to do it. The Raiders, to me, outside of Max Crosby, just don't have a whole lot going on defense. And, is typical New England they choked the life out of Las Vegas. I would be concerned if they have to go up against the Kansas Cities and the Baltimores, though.
They're playing Kansas City next week, so that's a tough spot for them. John Gruden, by the way, you basically got on the plane when he kicked a field goal down 13 points on the 7-yard line on 4th and 5 late in the game when their defense was not making any stops to cut it from 13 to 10. I mean, they have what is that index? There's a Twitter account, the the gutless index. I don't even know what it was.
Too many indexes.
Gutless decision. That's the most gutless decision I've seen by a coach, at least in week 3.
The only index that matters to me
calling
is
out.
the QB index by Chris Wessling every
Oh,
week.
yeah.
Doing a great job this year. Yeah.
You said that Rex Burkhead or the Patriots choked the life out of Vegas.
Well, I mean,
What?
I think Corona did that initially, but then, you know.
I was going to say, it's been quite a 2020 for
Yeah.
poor Vegas, but the team that plays there will live for another week. All right, we have a bunch of cornered animal games on the schedule. Ricky, let's get a drop there. Very nice. Let's check out the first one from Heinz Field.
Ben feeds Connor, gets a block on the flank, inside the 10, inside the 5. Touchdown, James Conner from 12 yards out. James Conner off the right side, but I defer to my offensive lineman in the booth. There's a lot happened up front.
Matt Filer hooked Whitney Merciless, and he hooked him, and that's why James Conner skirted outside.
I can tell you Filer took no mercy on the merciless one.
Yeah.
Bill Hillgrove and Tunch Ilkin with a call for WVE. I like this. This is the old Damashek theme. Let's just play this with Steelers games. James Conner put the Steelers ahead for good midway through the fourth quarter. The Steelers defense smothers Deshaun Watson in the final 2 quarters after the Texans quarterback had a really nice first half. But it was all over after that. 28-21 the final. Steelers are 3-0 for the first time in a decade. The Texans 0-3 for the second time in 3 years. And you'll remember, or perhaps you won't, that in 2018, that Texans team that started 0-3 went 11-5. But you know what? This feels different. Probably didn't feel too good at 0-3 in 2018, but it certainly doesn't feel good right now. And I think the most disheartening thing about this game was the way it played out. Because, yes, we're all aware by this point, Texans got screwed. The scheduling gods were not fair. Chiefs, Ravens, Steelers, weeks 1, 2, 3. Those are 3 of the top 5 teams in football, you can say. And they just were outclassed in the first 2 weeks. But on Sunday, this did feel like the classic cornered animal game where the team that's 0-2 that desperately needs the win, they might not be better than their opponent, but they need the game so badly they just find a way, and you maybe get behind your best player and he gets you the W you desperately need. And Deshaun Watson had thrown for over 200 yards in the first half. He threw 2 touchdown passes. He was evading tacklers and making all those Deshaun Watson plays. All the wide receivers were back in the mix, and it just looked like the Texans had a real shot. And then it all got wiped away once the Steelers changed up their defense a little bit, got a little more aggressive, and from that point on, there was nothing cooking. They had 5 sacks overall. They had less than 100 yards total, I believe, in the second half. Houston, no points, and the Steelers grinded it out. Mike Hilton had an interception early in the fourth quarter, which set up a long Pittsburgh touchdown drive. That was followed by a 3-and-out by the defense, and then another grinding drive by the Steelers that ran out the clock, and that was it. So it wasn't a dominant effort by the Steelers. We really haven't seen that yet from Pittsburgh, but they're 3-0, and Houston, when you lose the cornered animal game and you go 0-3, you're essentially on life support, and that's where they're at before we even sniff October.
It typically means dead animal if you lose cornered animal scenarios.
Yeah.
They have no identity. The second week in a row, they have no running game to speak of. And second week in a row, they could not stop the footprints on their back in the second half of the game. And you're going to think I'm crazy because he went over 100 yards for back-to-back games. But I think James Conner's a problem for the Steelers. I think he's the slowest starting running back in the NFL. And I think for this last week, he had a 50-yard run at the end that padded his stats. This week, Steelers' offensive line was blowing Houston off the ball almost every fourth quarter run, and James Conner had plenty of room to work with. But I think you saw why they started to get their rookie, I think his name is Anthony McFarland, involved today for a change of pace rule because they need a big play element. And I think that James Conner's stats are not reflective of the way he's playing.
I mean, that's a good problem to have, though. You can survive if that's your biggest problem. I mean, their defense puts up crooked numbers. If you look at kind of the the box score,
there's an issue here too. Their secondary is not nearly as good as last year. And you asked me last week after the Broncos played them closer than one might expect what was wrong. I went back and watched them during the week, and Devin Bush is getting dragged around the field by tight ends. He's a problem. Joe Hayden looks like he's lost a step. Steven Nelson has been burnt a few times. Hilton had the interception today, but also got burnt by Randall Cobb. Pass rush is legit. I just worry about the coverage of their secondary.
Right. It's all pass rush. 12 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 4 pass defense, which is partly the pass rush. It's like that pass rush and that offense, that'll beat some bad teams. They haven't played like a team, I think, off the top of my head, that's had a win this year. So they haven't really faced tough competition quite yet.
I'd be concerned with the Texans defense, and they came in as the second or third worst defense against the run. And for James Conner's deficiencies that you point out, Wes, that might be there, like he's still putting up these numbers. And the Texans, to me, you can't count on them to really run the ball effectively and dominate that way, and they can't stop the run. And I don't think 0-3 against these 3 teams. You got to sort of stop yourself at the door and let's see where they are, a month from now. But they're 0-3 for a reason too. I just think that they're a weird team that I don't trust them at all. Does someone trust them to go on this run that they did 2 years ago after that rough start? I don't.
You can't. I'll give you one stat that tells the story of Sunday, and then one stat that, and some of it's luck, but it's terrible if you're a Houston fan. The exact figure is 51 yards in the second half today and just two first downs. That's it in the final 2 quarters. That's a Deshaun Watson team led by Bill O'Brien, and they don't have a turnover yet this season. 0 turnovers. Not going to win. If you don't have an explosive offense and your defense is only so-so and maybe less than that, and you don't get turnovers, look out.
And one difference between now and 2018, I was going to say between now and 2018 is the AFC South is better. I mean, you have the Titans at 3-0. The Colts are a solid team.
AFC is a completely different conference too. So it's not waltzing into the AFC title game based on a 11-5 record where you've got plenty of weaknesses.
Speaking of AFC South teams, let's move on.
His
Cornered
career
animal talk.
long, not at altitude,
Animal.
is 58.
Cornered
right
animal.
hash for the lead. Snap, set, kick. God! Holy Toledo. 55 yards for the lead. Wow.
That was insane.
Oh, I love the National Football League.
Oh, coming to the club. Mike Keith, you come in too. Drinks on us. Steven Gostkowski has offered up the finest comeback story of this young season. From the utter embarrassment of Week 1 in Denver to the glory of Sunday, 6 for 6 on field goals, including that 55-yard blast. Never a doubt to put the Titans ahead for good in an eventual 31-30 win over the still winless, still cornered, still limping Vikings. Oh, I don't know. We have to invent a new game, because you know who plays next week? The Vikings and the Texans. Is it the rare double roadkill game? Where we just poke at them with sticks?
Yeah.
Remember there's always the one psycho kid?
Cage match.
There's always one psycho kid in the neighborhood that would be interested in the dead cat on the side of the road. That's who's going to be interested in that game.
Was that you, Mark?
No, I had friends that they got into this thing, which was really I didn't approve of, although I participated in first grade, where you take a frog. We lived near a pond. You take a frog and throw it up 15 feet in the air, and it would land on the cement and suffer incredible bodily injuries. And I walked away from that contest after about a week of that thinking, this doesn't feel right in my heart.
That's good.
If that's what you're asking, Greg.
So what happened to the rest of your future serial killer friends?
Well, I don't know. Unaccounted for. Probably out on the run. Very concerning.
All right.
Wow.
So, real deal. Gostkowski, good for you, man. It just shows you how with kickers it's having that resiliency and that it's like a good closer in baseball, Wes. You got to be able to put the failure behind you, and the mental side of it is almost as important as what the power in the leg. So good for him. And as for the Vikings, I think we all have teams that we're wrong about, that we feel strongly about in late August and early September. For me, it's the Vikings. I thought they were going to be a solid team. I didn't think they were a Super Bowl team, but I thought they were a team that was going to be in the mix and taking a playoff spot. But that's hard to make a case for, and it goes back to their defense. 446 yards allowed today. I mean, these are the two things you wasted. Dalvin Cook, career best running day, 186 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, I talked about it last week, that one of the problems of the Vikings in the first 2 weeks was the offense looked like it had a quarterback that only trusted one guy, Adam Thielen. Well, here's Justin Jefferson, the first-round pick, goes 7 for 175 and a touchdown. And you lose because you can't get a stop on defense for the life of you, and now you're 0-3 with 2 home losses, and it's just grim. So the Titans are 3-0, conversely, and they have their 3 wins by a grand total of 6 points. So try to figure out where they place in the pecking order. That's my job as power rankings guy, so I have to figure that out later tonight. But they are 3-0, and the Vikings are in a world of hurt at 0-3 with a roadkill game coming up.
I'll take your closer-kicker analogy one step further here, Dan. As a general rule, both species tend to be overrated simply due to their usage. But the exception is that a lights-out closer, just like Justin Tucker, is invaluable.
Right.
Just invaluable.
Exactly.
Well put. I saw some of the quotes, and Gostkowski might be their MVP, by the way, or at least Vrabel's decision to keep him is.
Let's calm down.
He was amazing last week.
He missed an extra point last week too, but he was better from field goal range. Yes.
But he hit 2 tough field goals at the end of the halves, and then today, or at least the decision to keep him is amazing. Mike Zimmer, on the other hand, I think is losing his mind. I mean, he's not a guy who handles losing well. He called their last drive that the Texans had. I mean, they got the ball back down 1.
It was
plenty
a mess.
of time.
It was bad.
He called it chaos. And they asked Kirk Cousins about it, and he just said, "Well, I'm not sure what he's referring to. You'll have to ask Mike." So that's not great.
Oh, watch the tape, Kirk, because they never even competed in that last drive.
Zimmer also, when they were kind of picking on his cornerbacks, he then threw his 2 safeties under the bus and saying they're biting on play action and giving up these big plays. They got the big names, but they're making big time mistakes. Talking about Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith, so it's like it's tough times right now.
I mean, the Vikings' last drive was 4 plays for negative 14 yards with an interception. What is cloudy to Kirk Cousins about what was
and I will say
unpleasant
in the defense of Cousins, when you go back and watch it, I don't know what happened, but there was some type of egregious breakdown on the offensive line in that last possession because he snapped the ball and he had 3 guys in his face, it felt like, almost immediately. So that could sometimes be on the quarterback too for a variety of reasons, but it was, in all phases, a total breakdown. It's just there's no juice with this team right now. And like I said, when you get that game from Cook, when you get Jefferson stepping up, and you're 0-2 and you're at home and you got to lead. They had a 12-point lead in the third quarter. You got to win that game, and you didn't. And now you got to pay the consequences.
I enjoyed your tweets about Jefferson because very astute. He does change everything with this offense. It's exactly what they needed. It's what they haven't had. Cousins trusting receivers other than Thielen to even be open. That's exactly what this offense needed.
So, do you think, though, inside the building in Minnesota, that there are people thinking we have got to think about the quarterback position?
Well, they just gave him a new contract. It kind of slipped under the radar, but they just gave him a second contract.
I'm just wondering what they're thinking
in
their
their
heads, because I'm not out to kill Cousins.
Maybe a second contract was unnecessary. That was my vibe, because you could have had him as a lame duck QB and then explored your options. But this game was not. They had more yards in the first half this game than they did in 4 quarters last week. And it seems like, especially if Jefferson is a guy who can put together multiple weeks, their offense with Gary Kubiak there, I think they're going to be back on track. But I don't know if there's a solution on defense. So far, it is no bueno.
Oh, you can't just take Kevin Stefanski out of the building and think that you're gonna seamlessly roll into the next season as a playoff operation.
He's feeling himself. He's feeling
himself. It's very clear that you can't do that. So
he's feeling himself.
Mark, it's a fair question about Cousins and regret, because go back to that division championship week against the Packers when they broke Cousins. And in 4 or 5 games since then, they have gone like 3 full quarters without moving the offense at all. It's been downright dysfunctional, and you just don't see franchise quarterbacks go through games like that.
Right. He feels like someone that could be broken. That is sort of my concern about him versus other quarterbacks out there.
All right, let's move on.
Quarterbacks break all the time.
This could be the last play of the football game. Single high safety. Herbert on the back pedal, being pressured. Throws underneath, and it's caught the hook and ladder, but it's dropped. The ball's loose at the 20. The Panthers fall on it, and Carolina is going to win this football game. The first win, there are no flags, the first win of the Matt Rule era, and it comes almost 3,000 miles away from home, but what a joyous flight home it will be for these brand new Panthers.
Wake up. Mick Mixon, who only now I realize sounds exactly like famed wrestling announcer Jim Ross. Like, I thought it was him. Carolina forced 3 turnovers. Joey Sly kicked 5 field goals. Man, the kickers have really answered after the closed-door meeting at the Kicker Club. The last 2 weeks have been excellent. And the Panthers beat the Chargers 21-16, giving Matt Rule, as we heard from the Jim Ross imposter, his first victory in the NFL. Mark, the Panthers defense was a mess in the first 2 weeks, but a date with a rookie QB in Justin Herbert was a recipe for getting right, I guess.
Yeah, I think that'd be the story of the game. I mean, you could have looked at the Panthers defense and with evidence and logic said it was a bottom 3 defense in the NFL. And that may still prove to be true. But Derek Brown, who had not really shown up a lot in the first 2 weeks, the first-round pick, played well today. Brian Burns had a strip sack. Justin Herbert, I still totally believe in this quarterback. He still does some things that just make you think they've got something here. But, I would imagine that the idea that he needs to come out and do what he did last week and just do it week after week is a tall order. Austin Eckler played a really good game for a part of this. But they struggled, and they're to me, they're just a team that they're limited. They're just limited. I don't love their passing game at all. I give the Panthers a lot of credit. I mean, was their first win, by the way. He said of the Matt Rule era, their first win in 329 games. 329 days. So
that would be
not
rough
games.
if it was
Games would be
games.
notable. Games would be notable.
Were we at the last win? The London game, was that the last win?
It was November, I believe, so I think it would have been a little bit after that. But Joey Sly, your boy Dan, he took your conversation to heart. He was 5 for 5 on field goals. He's in that. You've got your Butker and those guys up at the top, but Sly is sort of
Justin
creeping
Tucker.
into that. Well, I call him those guys. He's creeping into that next tier though, and this is something for the Panthers to build on. Sly is. I mean, he's money.
I know Kai Forbat's on the practice squad now, so he better not slip up.
You could almost hear it in the call though from Mick Mixon. I mean, the story to me was the last 2 plays of the game. Number 1, you have one-on-one Keenan Allen versus Trey Boston. You throw it up. Ooh, you like those odds. Trey Boston makes a play. The next play, they had it. I mean, that was the play of the year. It was all set up. It was perfect. Eckler scoring that touchdown. There's no one there on the edge. Keenan Allen catches it. He makes a bad pitch to Allen, but it was
a bad pitch.
It was drawn up perfectly. No one was really on top of Allen. He sort of rushed the throw, this is easy for us to say on the sideline, but it was exactly how you draw it up. No one was really right on top of Allen, and all he has to do is complete the pitch to Eckler, and we are talking about that play as one of the plays of the year. It was right there. It is going to be a brutal play to watch for them the next day.
Well, it was that. It's also like that's how you're stuck having to try to win these games. I mean, they're not a dominant team that separates from anyone else on offense. But you know what? Like, to be here in week 3 with Herbert as the starter, we'll see what happens with Tyrod Taylor and Anthony Lynn and the rest of it. But I would stick with Justin Herbert.
Wonder.
I really would.
Now that, and I don't know the severity of the injury, obviously unfortunate circumstances with the team doctor and the needle and the collapsed lung, but you're coming off a loss now where Herbert didn't light it up. If Anthony Lynn wanted to Tyrod Taylor the respect and maybe avoid a lawsuit? I don't know. Would he turn to him?
Sounds
in
pretty
the upcoming
indefinite.
week?
The injury, the way they talk about it, it does not sound like something that he's going to quickly recover from.
All right. Well, let's move on. More cornered animal action.
Here we go.
So much.
39-yard attempt. Hash mark left side. Lions trying to pick up the victory. Prater's ready. Mulebach to snap. There it is. Fox the spot. Kick away. It is up.
Sir.
And it is good. And the Lions have won it.
Sir.
The Lions have gone to the desert and picked up victory number 1.
That's why you never corner a lion. Who corners a lion?
Bad move.
You're going to get those big old paws and the big old mouth and those angry eyes. Matt Prater's game-winning field goal attempt was true. And the Lions beat the Cardinals. What was it, 23-20?
26-23.
26-23 to snap an 11-game losing streak that dates back to last season. Matthew Stafford put on a clinic on the final drive of the game, milking the better part of 5 game minutes before that game-winning boot by Prater, who wears an earring in one ear. Greg, the Lions, everyone associated with the Lions, including Kevin Patra, needed this one.
They did. I mean, you don't corner the lion. You don't corner a panther. Those big cats, you don't corner them.
Wouldn't do it. Shouldn't do it.
I saw a lion at the Santa Barbara Zoo on Saturday. You wouldn't want to corner that guy.
No, definitely not.
He's gonna come out scratching.
I mean, Greg, he's in a zoo, so he's been cornered and beaten essentially.
Actually, he was kind of just
like a life.
He was kind of just chilling there. To be honest, it was actually a little sad.
Browbeaten.
Yeah, he was sitting there, but he was a beautiful.
Although zoology has come a long way,
was.
especially in their exhibits, where they try to at least recreate the setting of their natural habitat compared to. You go to the old L.A. Zoo in Griffith Park. It basically looked like an insane asylum from the 1700s. You'd stick a gorilla in that thing, and it would just be like, my goodness, Maron. Now, at least, there's no progress.
I appreciate your pro-zoo diatribe, but, I mean, zoos are still essentially...
Well, I would not call that a pro-zoo diatribe.
This was like a rescue. It was, one of those... They always say, well, we rescued him, otherwise he wouldn't survive
Get the tranks,
in
Ricky.
the wild. But, Matthew Stafford, he can survive in the wild. You said it, Dan, and I thought he's been erratic. Through 2.5 games. Really, this game too. Hasn't been quite what you would want. Missed a lot of throws in this game. They picked off Kyler Murray 3 times. They dropped a 4th pick. They had great field position that they didn't take advantage of. But on that drive, it was like so calm. Every decision was right. He saw where the blitz was coming from. He had one of the prettiest throws of the year that would have put the Lions down at the 1. With just over 2 minutes left, called back by a holding penalty. I mean, this was an unbelievable throw to Marvin Hall. And you just figured, well, that's the Lions' moment. That was like they were going to win the game, and now they're going to lose the game because of the Lions. And Stafford, who has, I think as many game-winning comebacks in the fourth quarter as just about anyone, just like showed you how it's done. They killed the clock nicely. And they got out of there in a game that I was like, frankly surprised every time they got a stop. It felt like a little bit of a miracle every time they stopped the Cardinals' offense.
Wow. So that's where we are with the Lions defense right now, because we can expect with Kenny Golladay back that they might have a frisky offense. But the difference between these two teams, and I don't think the Cardinals defense is very good either, but the Lions defense is the worst unit in this matchup.
I mean, Jamie Collins made a pick. Jamie Collins really forced 2 turnovers, so he earned his big paycheck today. Deron Harmon, another former Pat, had a pick. Murray, I don't know if he wasn't seeing the guys. That was Brady Quinn's guess because of Murray's height. I don't know. Bad decisions. I don't know. He made bad decisions. Probably the worst decision he made was late in the game on a 3rd and 9. Again, I'm telling you, they had a hard time stopping the Cardinals' tempo. When it looked good, but it was just turnovers. They didn't punt till the 4th quarter. He had a 3rd and 9 where he has Isabella wide open, and instead he decides to throw it 60 yards down the field, double coverage, goes incomplete, and that's where Stafford goes and wins the game right after that.
Some people tend to miss that Kyler Murray is not the tallest quarterback, but because of the size of his helmet, which is truly gargantuan, he appears to be 7'6". But when you take the oversized helmet off, he is only 4'7". That is a fun fact for you guys. Struggling. Those lines are big.
4'7". I mean, man, his good plays though are so good. I mean, his rushing touchdown the move he put on Okudah was just outrageous, and the throw he had to Isabella for a touchdown was just ridiculous. I mean, his good plays are just so good. They just make you believe everything's possible. But they're not quite there. I don't think their passing game, by the way, has been any better this year than it has a year ago with DeAndre Hopkins.
It might be worse.
It might. So far, I would say it's worse. They've relied on him scrambling. And Hopkins has had another monster game, has over 350 yards, but no one else is above 100. Or maybe Isabella just went over it. So they're just a little uneven. I actually thought they looked like the Cardinals I expected, except for the turnovers today, but that's a big exception.
Right, no one had more than 47 yards outside of Hopkins. But so the Hopkins thing it's working out, but you're suggesting that maybe he's getting too much attention?
No, just that their passing game as a unit has not been better this year. I don't think his passing's been better. I think it'll get better, but that's not the reason why they've been winning these games, or at least their first two.
I was thinking it was going to be the Ewing theory in Houston, but it hasn't been that way so far.
He's been phenomenal as a scrambler, like Lamar Jackson good as a scrambler, but please stop talking about Kyler Murray an MVP candidate in the same sentence. It's September, first of all, and second of all, he hasn't passed well at all.
Well, 3 picks will help you out there.
Plus, Russell Wilson's in the league. Andy Isabella, by the way, was the pick, the Josh Rosen trade pick, and he has gotten off to a bit of a slow start, the former second-round pick, but 2 touchdowns in this game. So that's a positive on the non-DeAndre Hopkins beat. All right, let's move on. Good job, Patra.
Running back is Rojo. Ronald Jones tied it in motion. Brady will throw a fade route near sideline. Caught ball. Mike Evans, touchdown Tampa Bay. Buccaneers get 2 catches in the end zone from Big Mike Evans. 52 career touchdowns. And the Buccaneers lead 23-3.
Jane Deckerhoff, WFUS. With the call, Tom Brady threw 3 touchdown passes, including a pair to the eternally overlooked and underrated Mike Evans, in my opinion anyway. And Shaq Barrett celebrated his return to Denver with 2 sacks, including a safety. Sorry, Mark. Ooh. The Bucs 28-10 win over the winless, the hapless Denver Broncos. So you can corner a Bronco because the beast is so large that it putting it in a corner essentially paralyzes it. It can't move. And if you ever get nervous, Ricky, what do? You trank it.
A lot of cruelty to animals here.
A lot of aggression.
Wes, Tampa Bay's defense against Jeff Driscoll felt like a mismatch. Apparently that was the case.
Yeah, and I fully expect everyone to keep talking about the Bucs offense because of the names involved, but to me, the more fun unit to watch and the better unit is the defense, which for the second week in a row basically had a feeding frenzy at the expense of the quarterback. Turnovers galore, sacks, blitzes from Todd Bowles, which Greg always loves.
He's on fire right now.
Levante David, 1 interception, almost had another. Devin White turning into a great linebacker there in the middle. This is a really good defense. And in the offense, you can tell they came out trying to get Gronk involved. I think he had like 6 first-half targets in this game.
That's nice.
Still moved the ball. They had a good.
Well, did he do anything with the
This
targets?
was not a game in any way.
He said just this week that he's here to block.
Well, I think that was like his. You know how it is.
Bit?
That's the feed me call. Like you guys are gonna. I'm gonna act like I enjoy blocking, but still a few passes coming my way would be nice.
Well, Wes, it's 2020.
Still has great hands.
He's got to go onto his Instagram and scrub all mentions to his team. That's how you get targets. That's what I learned.
Should have had a TD too, but Brady overthrew him in the corner of the end zone. One of the few mistakes Brady had. Brady had a pretty good day passing the ball.
Well, I was going to ask you, Wes, like, where are we with Tom Brady 3 weeks in? Where is he in your QB index? Where is he in your QB overall world?
He was 15th going into this. He will climb a few spots based on what other people did and what he did. I don't see him as a big issue. Like the way I see Drew Brees' physical limitations are an issue. I don't think Brady moves as well in the pocket as he used to, but he's shown that he's making the throws. The throws are not a problem.
If I know Wes, I know. I feel like you probably like a little Antoine Winfield Jr. They do have some defensive backs that Bowles really knows how to use. Winfield Jr. and then Murphy Bunting when he's healthy. Carlton Davis is playing well. It's like no one knows these guys yet, but great. I think they will know them eventually. Because I'm with you. It's early, but they look like one of the very best defenses in the league.
The funny thing about the Bulls assance, Greg, is that you got on a little prematurely. But now
I just like
kinda,
the friskiness, the aggressive blitz.
No, that's called, it's called looking ahead. Greg
blitz till it doesn't matter anymore.
But it kind of worked out for you. You were like a guy that like showed up at the movie theater 7 hours before Bad Boys 3 or something, thinking that you would need to do that and to get in, but it wasn't the case at all. So you had a front center seat. But
the movie's great.
Ultimately, it's worked out for you.
Thank you. I mean, the talent and the aggressiveness. He calls a fun game. I know what Wes is talking about. At least, like, if you're going to just be on defense, make it fun. Blitz like freaking crazy.
Oh, you got Vita Vea eating Lloyd Cushenberry's lunch. You got JPP making Noah Fant look like a chump. This Bucs defense is everywhere.
Do you think that Rippon, the nephew of Mark Rippon, will take this starting job away for good?
Isn't it Rippon? Is it Rippon?
I call him Rippon.
Rippon came in to play in garbage time. You can't really assess much. It was deep garbage time. There wasn't much of a pass rush. He got throws out early, but they were like 4 and 5 yards at a time. It's really hard to tell. My sense was they figured Driscoll isn't moving the ball and he's getting killed. He's getting hit like every series. Let's just get some data on this other guy and help us make a choice next week. But I don't think Rippon is like some high upside guy.
Former Super Bowl champion Mark Rippon.
I have always said Rippon, but I also take that New York Times survey they do about certain words and how you pronounce them, and realize that 98% of America does not say words that I say the way.
Well,
that
there
I
is
say,
a right or wrong way to say a last name. I mean, so it's not like it's interpretation.
I specialize in getting some of those way off.
It's philosophical.
Never.
Like Brett Favre pronounces his name incorrectly, but who are you to tell him that?
Thank you.
Tyrod Taylor. He doesn't even know how to pronounce his name. All right, let's move on.
Mayfield under center, gives the ball. Chubb's coming out to the left. He's getting led by Wyatt Teller. He's to the 15, 10, 5, corner, touchdown, Nick Chubb! He's done it again!
He is amazing.
Jim Donovan, Doug Deacon. You just haven't heard those names a lot on this program. WKRK with the call. Baker Mayfield threw 2 touchdowns. Nick Chubb ran for a couple more. The Browns 34-20 over the Washington football team, playing without Mark Rippon. The Browns are over 500 for the first time since 2014. That's crazy.
What?
Mark, watching this game from afar, you see the ticker telling you Washington is up in the fourth quarter. I guess things changed in a hurry, huh?
Yeah, and to your point, an incredibly depressing stat for the city of Cleveland was produced early in this game. That it had been 84 straight games that the Browns had been at 500 or below 500.
Whoa.
That is years. Okay, that is years. That tells you a lot about my mood that in dealing with many of you over the course of half a decade. I
not
would
really an
point
excuse,
to,
but that's okay. Go on.
It's not an excuse. It's not a fair excuse. Their better players are playing well right now. Myles Garrett's 2 straight weeks with a strip sack in a pivotal moment. Nick Chubb, and I'm not trying to look at Nick Chubb differently than I would other running backs. I just love the way that he operates. He's just fun to watch. He is a punisher. They are lucky to have basically lured in Kareem Hunt and then re-signed him, I think, at a very, very incredibly affordable market value, and have what I think is the best backfield in the NFL. And Mayfield 2 games in a row. It wasn't the Bengals game. They were not perfect, but Odell and Mayfield had a connection again in this game. And to me, Baker Mayfield played another clean game with an ounce of confidence that I think was missing last year. And I think the difference is, and it's not to pile on the Freddie Kitchens business, but they just seem to go into the last couple of games. Baltimore, I think you just dealt with a Super Bowl type team. But the last 2 games, they just seem to be more organized on offense, to have a plan and to execute it, which is a really unusual thing for the Browns. And when you look at Washington, Dwayne Haskins had 3 interceptions in this game, and they were killer. I'm not seeing a lot from Dwayne Haskins that points to me and says if there's any way that Washington has a chance to draft one of these quarterbacks early next April, that nothing would stop them from doing it. He's not in a great situation. He's in a talent-poor offense with a new regime, but there's just not much there that I'm seeing. And Cleveland, they're learning how to win. I don't know what to take away from this. I think that they're a team that is beating up on lesser competition. And we'll see what they do when they face a real team. They play Dallas next week. That will be more of an acid test in terms of their defense, which Cleveland's defense is concerning. There are problems there. They're banged up, but they're also just not a very good defense.
What's really jumped out to me compared to last year is their offensive line. And a guy like Wyatt Teller, who they picked up for peanuts before last season, and the offensive line gurus on Twitter are writing him up every week, talking about how improved he is, and he's one of the better guards in the NFL now. And you throw in one of the better centers, Joel Bitonio. That is one of the best interior offensive lines in the NFL. There's no reason this team should not run every single week on defenses. And if you can run, then there's no reason why Baker Mayfield can't do play-action fakes every week too.
Right. They only seem to lose their way. They had a hideous third quarter if you go back and watch this game. They got away from what they're good at. Just run the ball 60 times a game and see where it gets you.
Well, that's not enough to go as far as they want. It makes sense when you're going against Washington. I'm with you, though, on the offensive line. I mean, and I was wondering if I've seen things. I checked PFF. They basically have the best offensive line in football through PFF's grading through 2 weeks in terms of the combined run blocking and pass blocking, especially run blocking. But even pass blocking, they were third. I mean, Baker Mayfield, and you're right, they got to play better competition. Although Washington's defense is fine, he is in a great situation, and I'm eager to see, as you say, Mark, as they kind of step up in competition the next few weeks.
You assume they're going to continue to do well on offense based on what we're seeing from Dallas's defense, but yeah, once we get a jump up, this is a nice little pocket for them. Cincinnati, Washington, that's going to be a hotly. Listen, Mark, I don't know where you draft next Thursday, but a lot of people are going to want to watch that Cowboys-Browns game. I don't know where your pick is. So just get on your radar.
You think that one of you are going to be able to wrestle that game away from me? That's not how this works.
The draft is its own thing, man.
Even if you pull that off on NFL Network or whatever platform you attempt to pull that off on, we will have backwater talks that remove that game from you in a minute.
I'm planning CNN is where I plan to swipe the Browns Cowboys.
I have another guest spot on CNN on Tuesday night, by the way, so please tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern.
By the way, Chase Young, we all amped up about the Washington front four after week one. He left this game in the first half with a groin issue. He did
that
not
affected
return.
them. They were never the same. I really think that Chase Young is such a difference maker on that defense. When he went out, and I'm glad you brought that up, they were never the same. Montez Sweat, though, that guy had one of the better. I don't feel like he's been on my radar much during his career. Had one of the better games I've seen.
He's looked better this year. I mean, if you win the turnover battle 5-0 against Washington, you better win by a couple scores.
All right, let's move on to bleaker affairs.
Sets up, throws right side. It's picked off. Third of the day for the Colts. The Colts are running the other way with it at the 20. C.J. Carey, and Carey turns it all the way in to a pick six. Two of them on the day for the Colts. Touchdown, INDY. Defense, have a day.
Matt Taylor, Rick Venturi, WFNI with the call. Sam Darnold threw 3 interceptions, including a pair of pick sixes. And the Colts coast to a 36-7 win. They improved to 2-1 on the young season. Phillip Rivers, 17-21, 217 yards. His first turnover-free game since joining Indy. He's also now, and I know this doesn't matter on this podcast, but it matters to me, damn it. He becomes the 6th player in league history to throw for 400 career touchdown passes, and he's now over 60,000 yards. The fact that they were even debating on the telecast on CBS whether he was a Hall of Famer, for all his failures to win the big one and get to the Super Bowl, I just think he's been one of the best passers of his generation. That should get a gold jacket. The Jets actually moved the ball well against Indy, who entered this week with the top-ranked defense in the first half, but the wheels fell off, and things just kept getting worse. Darnold looked bad he made some nice plays, as he does every week, where he looks good, and then he makes some bad decisions, and it seems like when he makes a bad decision, he pays for it, and the Colts secondary was all over him when he put balls up for grabs and made him pay dearly. And as if it couldn't get worse, Mekhi Becton, who's been really the only shining star for the Jets in what's quickly becoming what looks to be a 1-15 type season, and they might be lucky there. He leaves with a shoulder injury, and you never want to hear a giant tackle having a shoulder issue because those things tend to be issues. So the Jets are the worst team in football. The Colts took care of business as they should. There's not much to take out of Jets games right now. The Jets are terrible. They're going to fire their coach. But I mean more from the perspective of the team that's playing them. Like, I didn't learn really much from the 49ers last week. I didn't learn anything from the Colts this week other than they could bully a team that's really would be relegated if the league was structured a different way. But nice job by the Colts, got the W and stayed healthy, and they move forward.
Colts are in a weird spot after these two games against the Vikings where Vikings are a better team, but just the way that game played out, they've had a strange season. The Colts dominated week 1 against the Jaguars, but they found a way to lose. They've played, three of the worst teams in the league, certainly three of the worst defenses, the way they're playing. It almost feels like their season hasn't started. I'm with you. I'm still not exactly sure what's up with the Colts, but that's fine. You're 2-1. They're my Super Bowl pick. So that when that happens, Dan, then Phillip Rivers will be an obvious gold jacket guy.
What you think he needs to win a Super Bowl?
Well, I don't know, but when he does, because
that would do it, though.
That would do it. I don't think so. I think he's a Hall of Famer.
There are a lot of people who hold his many, many seasons of high turnovers against him.
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
I mean, who do the Jets' top 3 receivers today were Braxton Berrios, Kalen Ballage, and Lawrence Cager.
Yeah, there was an epically bitter.
He made up that last guy.
I had to Google his first name.
These are guys being pulled off the practice squad. There was an epically bitter Jets text thread that I was on with my Uncle Stu, Keith, my brother, a couple of my cousins, and talking about, all right, what are we going to do with the Jets? What are we going to do with Darnold? And first of all, Darnold can't have too many more of these type of games because whether it's his fault or not, if things implode and they do go 1-15 and he finishes with 25 interceptions and 4 pick sixes or something.
And they have the 1 pick.
Yeah, they're going to get the 1 pick and they're going to feel like, you know what, let's just reset this thing with Trevor Lawrence or whomever it is. But the broader picture with the Jets is that they have so monumentally butchered these last 3 years that coincided with Darnold being drafted. They have so undermined themselves from an organizational standpoint that there is no way to accurately judge if Darnold is good, bad, great, or terrible. So
it's 100% on ownership to me.
It
has been the whole time.
Systemic.
I've said that the whole time. There's been, to me, it's 100% on ownership. The way that they fired McCagnon, the way, the sequence of events, how they decided to hire and fire, and the decision they made,
right.
By hiring Gase.
This is systemic, and it's ugly as it could be, Wes.
That's why your tweets about Darnold lately make me really sad, because you want so much to believe that he's not the problem, he is fixable, and I think it's sad because he's impossible to evaluate. 3 years into his career, you don't know what he is because everything Adam Gase was hired to develop and make sure isn't ruined is going ruined.
Right, and this may work out for Sam Darnold because he could get traded for a 2nd or 3rd round pick in April to a better organization that has more around him, and Jet fans don't want this to happen, but he can end up having a successful career elsewhere. And that will all be fine if it goes Kyler Murray for the Jets with Trevor Lawrence. But you know what it feels like if you're a Jets fan? It feels like you're just going to hit reset and you're going to take out the dirty laundry and then welcome in new future victims of your organization.
Right, because the
I've
other
been there before.
Yeah, like the other half.
Mark has too. Like
right, we all have.
Achilles Smith ends up replacing David Klingler, and it's the same routine all over again.
Right. The other half of Kyler Murray is Cliff Kingsbury.
Right.
Who had a total conviction on what he wanted at quarterback.
And the Jets will have a new coach, and they'll have a new coach.
13 games to go, though. 13 games to go. That's a lot of tape, and Darnold is in a tough situation. But I do think there's a way for him to show what a talented player he is. 13 games is a long time here.
And you're right. His job, and that's the only thing left for this season, is he needs to convince the powers that be, Joe Douglas specifically, that he is the guy that the rebuild should continue around. So far, it's inconclusive at best. Let's move on.
Here's a end around to Ayuk with Juszczyk out to block, and also Garland. Garland, a big-time block. Touchdown! San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk's first in the NFL.
Get that rookie the rock, and it's not even a reception.
Greg Papa and Tim Ryan all sorts of fired up about Brandon Ayuk, first-round pick. He led the Niners in all receiving categories and scored on the ground. And backup Nick Mullins threw for 343 yards and a touch. The Niners control action in all phases. 36-9 win at MetLife Stadium over the Giants. Greg, this East Coast vacation, embarrassing the Jets, then the Giants. It's like, a lot of family trips. Some bad things happen, sure, but a lot of good memories, too.
Great memories. I mean, I'm so impressed with Kyle Shanahan, your boy, Mark. When you make the case that he's like the best coach in the league, I mean, show these last 2 weeks. This game reminded me of that that Bum Phillips quote that Wes likes to bring up every once in a while. And it was about Bear Bryant, but the quote was, he can take his'n and beat urine, and then he can turn around and take urine and beat his'n. And I of course I believe that. You give him the Giants roster, he would have smacked this 49ers team around just like he did. And some people in my mentions going, well, they haven't played a real team. Give me a break with that. He's playing with like 12 or 13 backups. He's got Nick Mullins at quarterback, looking great, looking good by the way, making some good plays against pressure. His entire defensive line is totally wiped out. So you got to give credit to Robert Saleh. Saleh. They dominated on defense too. They scored every possession today. They scored every possession. The Giants did not get a single stop. And if they make the playoffs, the 49ers that is, I think you look back at these 2 weeks, maybe what comes up in against Miami and Philadelphia too, and it's like managing the schedule because a lot of these players will come back. You're not going to survive forever this way. But I think that's impressive to embarrass, to blow out actual NFL teams on the road with this array of injuries is something. Your boy, Mark.
I am a huge Kyle Shanahan person. I always will be. I don't need to go deeper into that. But he finds a way, no matter who his quarterback is, to get production. Nick Mullins. 343 yards with a touchdown and no interceptions. They let him throw the ball 36 times.
I mean, these New York teams, I just say, though, these New York teams are not even really NFL teams.
I get it, but they played the Steelers way tougher. The Jets played the Bills way tougher. It's like the Giants were in a game last week. Like, they're a professional team.
Oh,
and
for sure.
The 49ers scored every possession. I mean,
there's all these quarterbacks that are like in year 4 or 5 are like, when will they ever show us who they are? I mean, there's 8 of those guys. In comes Nick Mullins. Kyle Shanahan unleashes him for 36 passes, sight unseen, bang. I mean, they dominate. They dominated the Giants.
I mean, what a statement against the Giants secondary that Shanahan looked at the tape all week and was like, oh yeah, we can attack these guys with our backup quarterback and all our wide receivers hurt. It doesn't matter. And George Kittle out. They're better coached. They're better. Where are we on the Giants?
They lost Jordan Reed today.
Of course we did.
Which I thought was a big.
That was right on cue, though, Greg.
Loss.
The Jordan Reed injury is right on cue.
Hey,
but the Jason Garrett.
He'll always have week 2.
Is it time for Jason Garrett to start getting some heat, Greg? You want to take a victory lap because the Giants' offense isn't doing it right now?
Well, the line is no better. They're right back to where they were. The line's been terrible.
No,
it might be worse.
The Giants, the 49, that was what got me. I'm not shocked that Shanahan came up with some good plays. There were open receivers. I mean, Mullins made a lot of plays against pressure, too. The Giants had more pass rush in this game than the 49ers probably did. But, yeah, I don't know. They were the worst rushing team in the league with Saquon Barkley. So, yeah, they had 17 yards rushing on 10 carries. There was a couple fluky plays early. Jones has a bad pitch. He has a terrible interception, which wasn't fluky, to end the first half, and that just felt like curtains. But when your defense doesn't get a single stop all day against Brandon Ayuk, who had over 100 yards, looking good, that's on them. That's pathetic.
All right. Before we move on to our next game, it's time for the handoff. Unless, Wes, you want to stick around, your call. We didn't discuss
I'll let
it before the
Shook
show.
take it from here.
All right. Nick Shook, fresh from the gym. Looks like he's about to explode out of that Nike shirt. Wes, thank you for joining us. We'll see you later in the week.
Shook looks like The Rock about to endorse Joe Biden.
All right, Wes.
All right.
See you later, man. All right. Shook, welcome back to the flagship show. It's the start of a beautiful tradition. We had 2 games on the schedule with you and Sunday Night Football. You ready to dig in, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though these games were less than ideal.
All right, we'll knock them out. Here we go.
And now we're going to have a 4th and 7.
Nothing personal,
and Jake
Shook.
Elliott
We didn't know
comes
what
on.
the outcome was going to be.
And this is going to be a 59-yard field goal attempt for Jake Elliott.
Well, we've been here before.
We've been here before. Here it is. And now penalty flags fly.
Oh, no.
Oh, don't tell me the Eagles are going to.
I think there was movement by the Eagles.
Oh, no.
Oh.
It's a great radio.
My goodness. Oh, on a field goal to win it, a 5-yard penalty. That's inexplicable how they can't line up for a field goal. That's what they did. They backed Jake Elliott out of a 59-yard attempt.
It's uh-oh.
Nick's getting this treatment each week.
It's not just that you disappointed Merrill Reese. I mean, you disappointed the whole city. Eagles. Jake Elliott lined up for a 59-yard field goal with 19 seconds left in overtime. False start on Matt Pryor forced the Eagles to punt it away, punted for the tie. That's how it ended, 23-23. Kiss your sister. Everybody loses. Shook, the saddest thing is the Eagles needed a mini miracle just to get to this. What a disaster the Eagles have been.
Yeah, I told Erica to choose that call because no moment in the game captured how bad of a game it was more than that. You're already lining up for an improbable field goal, not impossible, but improbable. And then you immediately commit another error that then puts you out of field goal range, forces your coach to punt so that you can avoid perhaps turning the ball over near midfield and giving the Bengals a chance and then going forward from there. I mean, it was Carson Wentz was asleep at the wheel for the majority of the day. He still looked pretty bad, except for that last drive that tied the game. It's almost like he woke up and was like, hey, I got to go 75 yards here in under 4 minutes to tie the game. I can do this. And he did it just fine. And it kind of illustrated that the Eagles still have some talent and ability to do things. They just haven't done it consistently, and they couldn't do it in overtime, which is, capped off by that false start penalty in just an ugly way. No tie is ever pretty, but this was an ugly tie.
They punted 3 times in overtime. It's not like he didn't have a ball before that. Like, I think you could criticize Peterson for not going for it on 4th and 12 because there's only 19 seconds left. That play itself is going to take 6 or 7 seconds.
That's fair.
But you understand it because their offense is the worst in the league in terms of yards per play entering this game, and their yards per play against the Bengals defense actually went down. And they got the ball at the 45 at their own 45 with whatever it was, a couple minutes left. They only needed 20 yards to go kick a field goal and win.
Wait, how many seconds? 12?
There was 19 left, when they snapped it for the punt. So, it would have, you do the 4th and 12, that takes another 5 or 6 seconds at least off the clock. There would have only been about 12 for the Bengals. They would have been at the 40.
I mean, you could have done a hook and ladder type thing that runs out the clock. You could have done a Hail Mary that's going to take 10 seconds off the clock, and maybe you get a penalty or a catch.
Or just get 15 yards and kick a field goal and win the game. That's
that.
The thing. They had no faith that there was any chance they could do that. And Nick, it sounds like there's reason they had no faith in that.
Yeah, if you saw the 3 plays prior, they were crawling. I mean, they basically said, you know what? Okay, we're going to try and just get a yard here, a yard the next play, and then we'll just, there's the target line overlay on the field. They were inching toward the target line in the final minute and a half.
So
as if they accepted that they couldn't get 10 yards, get a first down, and get closer. It was they were playing not to lose in a tie game.
Against the Bengals.
Against the
Bengals. At 0-2.
The surrender index. That's what it's called.
Yeah,
I find it delightful that these two teams tied. I don't know what the anniversary would be, but back when Donovan McNabb, this happened with the Eagles against the Bengals, and McNabb had admitted after the game that he had no concept of the overtime rules
what a mess.
To begin with. I would ask you this though, Nick, what did you see from Joe Burrow? Because the pressure that he is under, and I think he's been pressured 42 times in the last 2 weeks, 8 sacks today. That was the huge question about his ability to, progress as a quarterback behind a terrible offensive line. They need to start hiring just find some large men in the Cincinnati area that are nimble and can move.
They're out there.
You see that fly?
I worry about him staying safe in that situation.
Yeah, well, so I was concerned last week being at TNF and watching him drop back over and over and over again, and you saw the amount of passes that he threw. I was wondering.
Humble brag.
No, you were loving it.
At TNF, huh?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's down the road.
Wow, you were like one of the 16 people there. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but
I
mean, the many times that he dropped back in that game, I understood because they needed to push the ball down the field to try to keep pace with the Browns offense. That wasn't the case today, and he still had 44 attempts. I know overtime was included. 52 total dropbacks today. The 8 sacks, as you mentioned, Mark. The 42 pressures in the last 2 weeks split evenly, 21 today, 21 last week. If you're going to have a quarterback that you spend the number 1 pick on and you base your franchise around, you have to invest in protecting him better. And I understand that's not all done in one off season, but how about limit the amount of times that he's going to take shots from guys? Today, he got destroyed by Malik Jackson after getting a throw off. It drew a roughing penalty. But I mean, I felt it here 500 miles away from Philadelphia. So can't even imagine what he felt like and still gutted out the rest of the game. This is happening to him on a week-by-week basis now. They're going to crush the guy before they get to the end of the regular season if they don't at least try to shorten their offense or hand the ball. If you got Joe Mixon back there and you had a lead for a good amount of the second half today and still, for some reason, kept trying to throw the ball down the field.
You're 0-2. The Bengals come to your building, and you're lucky to tie.
Well, you caught up a half a game. You caught up a half a game in the NFC.
Half game out?
Half a game back.
In the worst division in football, the NFC East.
They're thrilled that no fans are allowed in. I mean, that is one scenario where you're thankful that Corona reared its head in March.
They'd be throwing car batteries. All right, next.
Here's the snap.
It's like Eagles fans stop bringing up the battery stuff, bro.
He's hit into the end zone. Touchdown. Middle of the end zone. A beautiful throw ball to Anthony Miller. And the Bears have the lead in Atlanta. Terrific comeback in the 4th. And Anthony Miller hangs on to this one. Nick Foles took a crunching hit as he got rid of the football.
Oh, Jeff Joniak with the call. The Falcons, what are you doing? Surrender a 16-point lead in the final 6.5 minutes of play, and the Bears get 3 touchdown passes from Nick Foles, who came in for Mitch Trubisky, who stinks. 30-26, the Bears are 3-0. Somehow. And the Falcons, 0-3, become the first team in NFL history to lose back-to-back games in which it led by 15 or more points in the final quarter. Shook. Dan Quinn has had 18 lives, 27 lives, 36 lives. He's worth 4 cats. Where are we at here? Enough is enough.
You know, he showed his frustration in the final moments, and they had to call a timeout when he knew the game was out of hand, that it was no longer in reach after Deshaun Gibson's interception. And he took his headset off and almost threw it down and then stopped himself. But you could just see it, the look in his face. He was struggling with the fact that his team can't get a win even with, a huge lead. And, I was texting my buddy who's a Bears fan for the majority of the second half before the actual comeback really started. And I was like, hey, maybe your team's a 2-0 fraud. They don't look very good today. Mitch didn't look very good before he got pulled. Time for them to finally get a loss. And then you come back and, of course, they found their way back into the game. So you wonder, is it Nick Foles' heroism, which we've seen plenty of in the past, or is it the Falcons simply not understanding any concept of how to close a football game? Because so far through 3 weeks, they have no idea how to do it.
It's a little both. That game-winning touchdown was Foles kind of mad. That was Foles in a nutshell. Him getting hit in the arm. It reminded me of the play he got hurt on last year, and he's watching the game-winning touchdown from his backside. It had a couple other nice throws. Might give them a little more juice. They are the first team to ever come back, the Bears, from a 16-point fourth quarter deficit twice in a season and win. And they've already done it in week 3. Like
Two different quarterbacks.
It's outrageous. But you're right
feeling.
about the Falcons not closing, because you can't put it all on the defense either. The offense didn't score their last 6 possessions and had a bunch of 3-and-outs.
Not to bring it up again, but just like the Super Bowl. And so Matt Ryan is the guy behind center both of those games. There's something wrong with this Falcons team, and it's screaming to be blown up. Let's face it. Let's just be totally honest. How do you, your fan base is dying. There's a difference. I don't know what's worse, like to be a fan like I am of the Jets.
I think it's
a team that's hopeless, or a fan of the Falcons, where you show that not only can you hang with teams, you could beat up on teams and then completely pee down your own leg during money time. I mean, that just can't happen. It can't happen once in a season, let alone twice in 3 weeks.
I don't know what's worse between the two, but I think I would rather, having been a Browns fan, I think I would rather be in the Falcons situation than having no hope at all, because like Calvin Ridley had a nice day. Todd Gurley looked kind of encouraging at times. They did jump out. They've proven that they can at least play with another team or jump out to a lead. They just can't finish a game. So you go to bed that Sunday night upset that they lost, but thinking, if only they could just put 4 quarters together.
Or you just give up. Or you could give up. That's an option. You could enjoy the sport more and not be chained to a miserable experience, because the Falcons right now, I think they're number 1 in my pain rankings, because as 28-3 goes further and further.
I don't need a Patriots fan laying out the pain rankings.
Right. They are. They,
all due respect.
At least the Falcons are vaguely interesting. But I would say Dan Quinn was brought in to revolutionize their defense as a defensive, ex-Seahawks defensive wizard. And their defense has been the issue years in a row. The issue is not Matt Ryan, who's been the best quarterback in that division. It's the defense.
I wasn't plugged into the beginning of this game. Did Trubisky just get benched because he was playing terribly, or how'd that play out?
Yeah.
Threw a killer pick, didn't he?
Yeah, I didn't see any sign of anything on the sideline that they were examining him for any reason. It just looked like he looked bad. He was really being risky early too, just kind of heaving the ball around the field, and they had no momentum with him. And you get the classic coaching line when they make a mid-game quarterback change. Oh, we were just looking for a spark. Well, they got their spark today. So
yeah, it's funny.
Well, and that felt like politics too. There's all these teams that are stuck trying to like hoist up certain quarterbacks to make the front office look good based on bad decisions, past decisions. Like the Trubisky 2+ games thing was a political maneuver, and now they're stuck.
The way to do it. It's the way to do it. They're 3-0 now.
Yeah, right. You set them up to then pull him.
Well, that's fine. They're not 3-0 just because of Trubisky. But
my point is they got their. I don't know why they did that, but if you're gonna make a change like that, you're happy to do it at 3-0 with a comeback victory.
I mean, he still looks heartbroken on the sideline. I mean, it's like
kind of funny how
fading
predictable it was with Trubisky, though, because if you would have, I don't know if the desert does these things, Greg would know better than me, but if you would have had to set an over-under for when Nick Foles got into game action, you probably would have set it around like 2.5 games, something like that. And right on cue, there he is. All right, let's move on. Sunday Night Football.
From midfield looking for a shot. Rodgers sending it deep downfield, and Lazard brings it in. It's a first round. Take that. Doesn't matter what round I was taking. 48 on the catch for Alan Lazard, the undrafted player.
Aaron Rodgers having his way with yet another defense. This time it's the New Orleans Saints. Alan Lazard finished 6 for 146 and a touch. Rodgers 21 of 32, 283, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. 125 passer rating, another sterling effort from the future Hall of Famer in a 37-30 win at the Superdome. The Packers move to 3-0. The Saints fall to 1-2, and they have problems. Nick Shook, I'll start with you on this one. A lot of focus has been, and you get it, that's how football works. It's how sports fandom works. A lot of the focus on the Saints has been about Drew Brees. Is he in decline? Is he this? Is he that? Meanwhile, the Saints defense continues to be a major issue, slowing down opposing offenses, and the penalties continue to pile up.
Yeah, and the penalties piled up late in this game with 2 on Janoris Jenkins that put the Packers on the doorstep of scoring the game sealing touchdown, really. I mean, I guess you can't discredit the Saints or not too severely discredit the Saints for not being able to stop an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, but this is a trend. This isn't just a one-week thing, as you said. And no matter how well Drew Brees plays, they don't have the talent, and especially with Michael Thomas out, to really go toe-to-toe with a team that can really play high-level offense if they can't get a stop on defense. So that's definitely concerning for them right now, and the reason why they lost this game.
I watched this with our son Luke, who's a Saints fan as of about a season ago.
Wait,
and
what?
That's the team he's chosen, and he was very upset to see Janoris Jenkins get flagged like 87 times for pass interference. And at one point he said, "Him again? He's innocent." This was his quote. "Him again? He's innocent. He's probably so stressed." Well, I said, he's not innocent. He was clearly guilty of some of those infractions. Changed the game.
You watch your boy Aaron Rodgers, Dan. I know some things in this season not going your way 100%, but that All-Pro pick you have for Aaron Rodgers is looking freaking amazing. And you watch him, and you just think he's having so much fun. And I think about when Jay Sternberger caught a pass in the fourth quarter, and he immediately starts having fun with him because Sternberger had a couple big drops last week, and that was his first career catch. And then he keeps going back to him. Early in the game, he's like wiping down Lazard's face after that amazing catch Lazard had, which was an even better throw from Rodgers. I mean, just feeling himself moving to his left and like dropping it in the bucket from 55 yards away. It's fun to watch. I mean, he is, to me, him and Russell Wilson, they would be the best two right now after 3 weeks.
That easy flick from Rodgers, which you saw on that touchdown, that's probably my favorite throw in NFL history. I'm not old enough to take in peak Namath when he had an amazing follow through and he would zip the ball like nobody else. But Aaron Rodgers, the way he can just on the move, square shoulders, and then just flick it. And then it's just perfectly precise, hits a target. I mean, the man, when he is right, is just so fun to watch. And Alvin Kamara from the running back position is like Rodgers in that way. Like when Kamara's right, and he was in this game when he had just 6 carries, but for 58 yards. And then as a receiver, stepping up with Michael Thomas out of the mix, 13 catches, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that insane 52-yard catch and run where he got some help from, I believe, his center who was motoring up the field. That was it was special. It was kind of a fun game to watch, not just because it was competitive, but to see Rodgers at his peak right now, to see Kamara healthy. These are some of the best players in the world at their peak.
Yeah, the funny thing is the similarity between both of them, while they're very different players, the one thing I keep going back to with them is how light they are on their feet. I mean, Rodgers just bounces around throughout the pocket, floating left to right before flicking it, like you said, and then Kamara, of course, regaining his balance on that long run. And I like Greg's tweet about it, which is the Saints' entire offense is basically built around Kamara breaking tackles, which he obviously showed he's very good at. It's not really a reliable strategy, of course, and that was kind of what they leaned on tonight with him leading them in receiving and everything else, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Dan's favorite stat, average depth of target, ADOT. I mean, it had its night tonight. It was an ADOT night. All they did was talk about ADOT, I feel like, the whole time. And it's because Brees is, they made the point Brees is always at the bottom of the league in that category. So maybe this isn't that big a deal. But now he's at the bottom of the league by like a long shot. And this offense, it's been fine the last 2 weeks. It's taken a little attention away from their defense being even worse. I think Jeff Duncan pointed out they've forced 1 punt in their last 17 drives. So it was really the defense that, to me, deserves the L more than anything today than the Saints. But it's also not quite the Saints' offense. Even putting Michael Thomas back there, I don't know.
Well, let's talk about the Taysom Hill play. That really was the shifting play in the game. Rodgers is not attacking downfield. His average air yards per attempt, I believe, is sub 5 in this game, maybe even closer to 4. And they bring Hill out near midfield. He fumbles. Zadarius Smith with the forced fumble. Hill has not had the same success in this offense as last year. I wonder how much of that has to do with Drew Brees and how the offense is so one-dimensional right now that you bring Taysom Hill out there and there's just no fear in the defense that there's going to be a big play. It certainly hasn't happened yet.
I think it's a small sample size at this point, but you're right that like the Breeze Taysom Hill combination is less effective. I mean, the one thing is, if I were to wake up tomorrow and if people still read newspapers and I were to look at the Breeze box score, any other person would be happy if their quarterback had that box score. It's just that what we're seeing with Breeze is a little bit different. I still think that he's reading the field as well as anyone and made a couple really smart throws in that situation. But Hill is in there for that play because they have comprehensive trust in him to not turn the ball over, first of all. So for that to happen, I mean, everything went completely sideways from there.
I mean,
Breeze wasn't even on the field.
The Saints had 30 points though, at the end of the day. Even that was a killer turnover. It really it doomed them in some ways. But that to me, to go back to how I set it up with you, Shook, this game is on the defense, and a defense that a lot of people saw as one of the best in the league potentially entering the season. And they just got to be a lot better. And I'll add one more point, and it connects to the defense. Not all home field advantages are created equal, but that was a big deal. And Chris Collinsworth mentioned it during the telecast that nobody in that stadium at the Superdome made life a lot easier for Aaron Rodgers and company. And you just wonder if Aaron Rodgers is as comfortable. He just was casually dissecting this defense if there's not 75,000 screaming Louisianans down there tonight. But that's 2020 football.
And, I wonder like what kind of effect that's had on other environments in the league, but that environment, especially because of the way that the stadium's built, you're indoors, sound reverberates. They're famous for being very loud. We've seen this across sports in the time that we're playing these sports in right now. I mean, even the NBA, like you got the Lakers and the Heat in the finals, and you wouldn't expect one of those teams to be making it. So, and it's because they're playing in a bubble. So you get kind of a similar situation in some of these stadiums where there's no fans. You don't have that effect. And Rodgers, like you said, toyed with them multiple times tonight with those hard counts that they would never implement in one of those environments when they typically be going with a snap count. And that kind of changed the game because they got a free play there and threw up the pass that ended up in the pass interference and set him up on the goal line. But again, you're right. That defense has not stood up and done its job. Last week, it was Malcolm Jenkins getting victimized by Darren Waller, or most of the defense getting victimized by Darren Waller. This week, when they had a chance to get a stop, get the ball back for their offense, down 3, they couldn't do anything even close to that.
And they did it without Devontae Adams. To me, that makes this all the more meaningful. Right. I mean, their offense is just in such a different space than they were a year ago at this time when they were trying to figure each other out. Collinsworth made the point. A lot of times it's really Rodgers calling the play. I mean, he has like a menu of a million different options that LaFleur's setting up. They're in such amazing sync right now. I mean, to do it without Adams, where they're 3 tight ends, Tanyan Sternberger, and Lewis were like their second, third, and fourth leading receivers. I mean, that's amazing. And the Saints missed Jadeveon Clowney tonight. I keep bringing it up, but like Marcus Davenport is a whipping boy for Saints Twitter. 2 firsts. They were missing 2 firsts again. He missed his 3rd straight game. They had 0 pass rush. So Rodgers does have weapons. It's that offensive line. It's Aaron Jones. That's all he needs right now. I mean, and Matty LaFleur, the little man.
Right, we're all exactly
Bearded
Matt
boy,
LaFleur. We're only like 8-9 months away, out from Dan's dad delivering the little boy with a beard comment about Matt LaFleur that we all chuckled at and believed in because it made so much sense. He seemed like a small young man attempting to lead a football team into battle, but now I think Matt LaFleur is one of the stories of this game, that he has become a dude. And I was killing their record last year.
He inherited Aaron Rodgers. That was a good job by him.
Well, that's fine. But I mean, Matt LaFleur though is adding value, and he just took down Sean Payton. And Greg, I want to find out at some point. I'm going to go through the accounting. What kind of profits are you making off of Saints Twitter? You mentioned it at least 3 times a week in various platforms. We get it.
Love it.
You and Saints Twitter.
Well,
I don't understand
no one
what's
watched it on the
net.
if people didn't see it on the network, you got to get the 2 first. I like that as a running thing.
The Packers went 14-4 in the Bearded Boys' first year. They're now 3-0. That's 17-4. Did the math. And They have more points through their first 3 games this season than they've ever had in franchise history, and there's been some great offenses in the history of the Bearded Boy. I think that was more a general commentary my dad made on the youthful appearance of LaFleur. I don't think he was commenting on him as a coach, but I'll have to double-check with Keith on that. But let's stay focused here because there is a developing news story before we say goodbye. And I've been making a lot of phone calls and shooting a lot of texts, just trying to reach out to my sources and see who could figure out where was Al tonight. Al Michaels not in the booth. Last week it was Justin Herbert shows up for snap 1 for the Chargers, catching everybody off guard. Today it's Al Michaels replaced by Mike Tirico along with Chris Collinsworth in the booth. Do we have any info on where Al was tonight? Ricky?
Yeah, it was decided before the season that NBC said that Michaels would miss a few weeks this season where Tirico would sub in for him, as described as bye weeks to limit travel. And apparently Al Michaels this is a great schedule for me and I'm all in.
I have a source that works high up, is a major player in the broadcasting game, makes huge money, success, who feels that this could be a reaction to a potential Al Michaels pay cut behind the scenes, and he made the decision, I'm not calling every game if you're not going to give me the money I need. Now, this is, again, conjecture. We're still early in the process. Why isn't Al doing a full slate of Sunday Night Football? Maybe bye week. He's up there years. It's a pandemic. There's all sorts of reasons why
Tirico's making a lot of money. Tirico, you got to earn that.
I mean, Tirico's right. Talk about Tirico's basically your Taysom Hill that they have to find out. Right. Let's get this guy into the lineup, please. Here
wouldn't have had a holding penalty and a fumble. In like fourth.
Dan's like Tirico's not Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is not a real human being.
Thank you for saying that, so I didn't have to jump in. Mike Tirico is Steve Young, and Al Michaels is Joe Montana. That's where we're at. This Taysom Hill stuff.
Here's what I would say though. This whole idea of media people getting a bye week during the football season. I'll come back to it. It just makes a lot of sense. What did we get, about 4 days off this entire off season? Suddenly Sessler has week 7 off to just completely vanish, and that means all shows for the entire week. It just makes a lot of sense. Shook could get involved in that.
All right. So we'll continue to track this. Where's Al? All right.
What a song.
Good stuff. Can't believe we haven't been sued by NBC yet. But all right. So Nick Shook, you said it all. Thank you so much. We love this new tradition. And also notice Shook behind him has the NFL helmet that they give you when you leave the company, and then you sign it and you say, "Oh, Shook, it's been so great. Best of luck in your journey."
Covered.
And then Shook goes to the Browns for about 7 days and then comes back to the NFL. So he got the signed helmet and he got to come back to the NFL. So Shook, we're really gaming the system in a big spot.
It's my 3rd stint. So I figure, 5 or 10 years from now, maybe we'll be up to number 5. Yeah, I don't know.
How many helmets?
I think you also got the real life Browns experience, which is go in thinking that you're going to be there for 20 to 30 years and you're there for 20 to 30 hours, and that's probably about as long as it goes.
The big joke on Twitter when I left was, "Oh, you got off just as the ship was sinking," when really it was a completely different set of circumstances. But we'll let the public believe that.
Speaking of deep dives, the old Zeuser has another expose in the can. I just have to get a few more quotes and a couple more sources. What happened to Nick Shook and the Cleveland Browns? It's a secret or a story that has not been told yet, but we hope to get it down the line.
Another helmet I have here, if I can reach for it, is from the venerated desk of Mark Sessler. Hang on.
Can only wonder what this will be.
It is Mark Sessler's old Browns helmet before they changed their helmet.
Did you steal that from Mark because you're so much larger than him physically, or did he give it to you?
He gave this to me after I left the first
I gave it to him because he's so much larger than
first time. You're the Billy Martin of NFL media right now.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Shook. It's getting grosser. We'll be back on Tuesday with the podcast, and the wheel continues to go around and around and around. This is Dan Hansis signing off for Nick Shook. Get Shook with Nick Shook, the old boss. Quiet Storm, and of course, the mailman and Ricky Hollywood. Until Tuesday.